Do you want to dance?
Access 0096 just resubscribed for 15 months. Greetings, Bubbles.
Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome one and all. Get the game up real quick. How y'all doing? Now, if you're here for office hours, you're a little early. We'll be doing office hours a little bit later. That's going to be a separate stream if you're on YouTube. This is going to be for the lore tour. So this is going to just be a lore tour, then we're going to sign off, and I'll be switching over to office hours after that. So, hey, Danger Dave. Going great, 30K, yeah. Hey, Night Cobb. Oh, you're going to... Y'all are not going to like my takes, I don't think. Let's get... I am... Oh, what? What? Everything's going weird today. I don't know why my camera's not working. Hold on. Yeah, servers are on fire. Yeah, I'm sure. Do this. ETA 30 minutes. I'm impatient. Wow. There I am. Tried to do some things. Yeah, all I'm gonna say is I hate the storm. I don't hate it in the same way I hate the Redeemer. Nothing will ever fill that void of hate. And I don't even think it's as bad as, say, the Rock DS, which is just like, why do you exist? It's more of a, could this just gotten a little bit smaller? You know, like 2 meters skinnier? Maybe about like, you know, I don't know, 2 meters like shorter? Just trim off 2 meters here and there. Because if you did that, it'd be an Ursa sized. It'd be like, a striker is what that would be. You've just built yourself a striker. A light tank, effectively. It's great. But it requires you to be on a Hercules, which means that you're using the same footprint as a Nova tank. Likely higher speeds, but probably not as fast as a Cyclone, because that would be breaking the Cyclones. It would make that stuff, so. While we're waiting to get logged in, I'll show y'all. I feel like I'm the one with the hot take when I say I kind of like it. I mean, no, I made a hot take about how I didn't like it, and a lot of people said that was wrong. Let's pull it up and I'll show y'all. Just so you can have it, because I'm gonna show you all in stream when I can get in, if I can get in. That's not what I was looking for. No, you're not, because the store hasn't even started. I'm not even logged into the game yet. So this is the Storm. I do like that it has more lore than the other ships we've had. It's an old vehicle going back to 2606 for the Second Tavaran War. And the fact that it's $70 is kind of off, but it's got an interior weapons rack there. Holy shit! Oh man, I love it. Oh, I gotta show you this. Hurston Dynamics energy weapon. Yeah, we'll watch ISC on Office Hours. I did listen to that before going, so it'll be interesting to watch it again. But fucking. That's my problem there, Haldor. It's exactly right. The idea of a storm is good, but if it's too big, then why not just use a Nova instead? Exactly. Like, what's the purpose? Why are you? What is your role in the battlefield? Ubu disapproves. For those you don't know, the Nova also uses a bespoke Hurston Dynamics weapon. The size 5 cannon on the Nova is the Hurston Slayer cannon, is what it's called. Which means that Tumbril and Hurston have some tight connections. Because they likely have been making weapons for Tumbril since the First Tavaran War. Why would the Storm be more heavily armored than the tank? No, I don't think it is. I mean, what I'd really like to see is an infantry fighting vehicle from Tumbril. Something about the size, or maybe a little bit bigger than than basically an Ursa. And everyone's like, well, don't you have the Ursa? The Ursa? No. I want an Ursa with a size, 2 bespoke cannon. I want an Ursa with a turret. Bearing is, I gotta look up the history of Bearing, but I think Bearing doesn't have as long of a history. With the military. Yeah, Bearing is younger than Hurston. Bearing was founded in 2554, so it was founded in the middle of the UEE's formation from Mezer, and it was mostly it was R&D firms. For those of you who don't know, like almost certainly your coffee makers in the verse are Bearing. All of your refrigerators, all of your microwaves, they're Bearing. Bearing is the General Electric of the Star Citizen universe. Yeah, basically, if you took the Storm and you made it as big as an Ursa, or slightly bigger than an Ursa, it would make a lot more sense. It's like, okay, so this is an Ursa that fucks. That's what you're telling me. It's an Ursa with tracks that fucks. And I'm okay with that. That's a dangerous fucking vehicle right there. An Ursa-sized light tank. Yeah, that's everyone wants one of those. Because that's just like, hi, hello, my name is Death. I have come to serve you. That's great. It's just too big. Would people upgrade their freelancer to a miss to a Crucible or Liberator? Why? Like, a miss is a military ship, a Crucible is a repair ship, and a Liberator is a transport ship. It would make more sense to upgrade your freelancer max to a Liberator, and maybe upgrade a Vulcan to a Crucible. But no, the freelancer miss is a combat ship. The Nova needs ground clearance, and the Storm kind of has that, but at the expense of literal bigger footprint tracks than the Nova. Yeah, it's that's the problem. I'm still position 149 in the queue. You're gonna say Yamaha, very similar, but yeah, but Hurston has been around since before the first Tavaran War. Hurston was the original military manufacturer for weapons. The UEE and okay, let me put it this way. Hurston was making weapons for the UNE. They were founded a year after first contact with the Banu. They're like 600 years old. Solomon Hurston, who's the OG Hurston, the guy you see statues of everywhere in Lorville, he even claims that his family was developed the F-16. Had family. Hurstons were in the Manhattan Project. That Hurstons went far back into developing the first crossbows. That's the Hurston legacy. That's the Hurston's myth, is that they've been arms manufacturers for all of human history, and they only just became known after became known for their arms afterwards. So Hurston pretty much has dibs on weapons contracts, pretty much. Bearing is up there because they do a lot more personal weapons than Hurston does. That's really the difference, is that Bearing makes weapons, but the other thing is that Hurstons are pretty well-known tyrants, so they get away with stuff because they've been around forever, but I can't imagine the new UEE being very happy with them all the time. Dictators create their own story? Yeah, they're not going to redesign because they're already building it. That was the whole video. If you watch ISC, the whole video is like they're already in the process of it's in gray box already. So my guess is they're going to try to release it before the end of the year. Hey, Mighty Kingfisher. We would be in the game doing stuff right now, but I'm in position 60. Let me look up the Nova. Yep. The Nova's width is 7 meters and the Storm's width is 7.5 meters. So it's a half a meter wider, the Storm is, than the Nova.
You can take away my spaceship. You can take away my space suit. You can even take away my space lasers. But you can never, ever take away my space game.
Oop.
Mighty Kingfisher, just resubscribed for 14 months.
Thank you so much for that 14 months of support there, Mighty Kingfisher. You're a very important pupper, very impressive pisser, very good pedestrian. This is your fault. You should drink a night. Shots and cheers in chat, y'all. Shots and cheers. The Novas. It makes no sense that a light tank would have less armor than the main battle tank. It's a situation where CIG's rule of cool has gotten out of fucking control. There's also a problem in that they, there we go. In that the website says, or the specifics say no shield generator. The specs say no shield generator, but the website says it does have a shield generator. Which makes no sense. If it has more armor than the Nova, and it's faster than the Nova. What? Like,
you can take away my spaceship.
I'll start inviting people if you need invites.
Space
Suit.
You can even take away my space lasers. But you can never, ever take away my space game.
Wahoo 127 just resubscribed for 20 months. Waited until you took the helmet off. Play it again, Sam.
Thank you so much for that 20 months of support there, Wahoo. You are a very important pupper, very impressive pisser, very pedestrian. This is your fault. You're the reason you're drinking night. Shots and cheers in chat, y'all. Shots and cheers. Hey, Jock Cop. Yeah. See, like, the thing is that the idea and even the design of it is not too bad. I think it's doesn't really fit with the Nova, like the Tumbril aesthetic. I think it's far too anime for me. That's not saying that anime is bad. I love me some anime aesthetic. It's just, it doesn't fit with, it's kind of like how everyone looks at the Nomad and goes, the fuck did you come from? Like, Consolidated Outland has no style. That's their style. But like, at least with the Cyclone and the Nova, you can kind of see at least some of the design style, some of the choices. The Storm is just like, hey, what if the Batman Tumbril and the Scorpion tank from Halo fucked? It's very Tank Police. I saw you put that up there. The problem about the Tank Police is that those tanks are small. They're smaller than cars, which would be great. Give me a tank that's the size of a PTV, please, CIG. But even that, like I can forgive the aesthetic changes, is because it's supposed to be an older vehicle, and maybe they were experimenting. Maybe they let some weebs onto the design council for Tumbril. It is in Saisei after all, so like, you know, hey, I can forgive that. But it's like, why? By the way, if you want on, let me know. Let me see if I can find people who are usually wanting on Levity. Let's go with Ghost. Lotep. Remiko. Zal. Tree. Shiori. Yeah, if it was smaller, if it was just a tiny bit smaller, I said 2 meters length and width, even just 2 meters width, it would make it like a viable vehicle. Like I could put away the looks and just be like, hey, it fits in a fucking in a fucking Connie. Sue me. That's great. I love it. All right, Jack. Thanks, Ben. A track cyclone, yeah. Grabbed a links for my 600i. Just seems like a nice option. If it fits, though, with a rework, even a Tonk suit would soon fit. Yeah. Why what? Why would it be good if it was smaller? Because it would increase the number of people who could carry it. Oh, the G12 Expeditions, I don't know. Yeah, Lynx makes more sense for the 600i, yeah, than the G12 does. Yeah, well, we'll talk about the G12 and the X1 next stream or during the office hours, but not right now. If everyone else wants on, let me know. This is going to be a little bit faster. We're going to kind of do the turnaround a little bit more because I got to get started here. The Ranger. The reason why we don't have the Ranger right now has more to do with the fact that they're completely redoing how wheeled vehicles work in game, which seems to be taking them a long time, but they're in the process of it. They showed it off a little bit in the one of the ISCs, and they've been talking about it on the roadmap for a while. So it's getting its work done. It's just taking time, and so that's why we probably won't see any wheel vehicle released until the end of the year. It's more complicated than just cut the Cyclone in half, because you also have to figure out, like, because like the hover vehicles have the advantage of being hover, they don't fall over. How do you keep a vehicle stored like a Ranger? While that sounds like, oh well, you could just do this, it's like they could just do that, but they also want to make sure that it aesthetically works, that it works in terms of all like scenarios, and would work on a ship. Did you just confirm that CIG is reinventing the wheel? Indeed. Though it's more complicated than reinventing the wheel, because they're reinventing physics. That's the issue. It's not necessarily the wheel, it's physics. I'm at work, otherwise I'd roll in with you. That's okay. I got you, Joe Freak. I just saw you. I'll invite just Johnny just like because I can, but when you log in, Joe, let me know. Yeah, there's a global queue. The X1 makes no sense. The X1 makes no sense, neither does the G12. And you could sort of argue the G12 because they're still doing the wheel stuff, so yeah. They just watch, okay. But this is a kind of a weird one. I'm going to have to pull this up because let's see what's on. I have to see what's on the floor. But Tumbril, when was it founded? And then they probably got the Cyclone there, which is also known as the DX-20. It's, that Cyclone is its military handle. And then you've got the Nova. And now the Storm. And then the Ranger. Put all that up there. And then we've got Argo, RSI, Origin, RSI. There's a lot. This. I was looking at this like, holy shit, why is there so many goddamn ships? Because you've got Argo, Origin, RSI, Consolidated Outland, and Tumbril. I love that the links was just. It's just. I was just sad you can't drink the champagne. It's just an ornament. Yeah. Hopefully that eventually comes in there. I'm going through all of my notes and sorting everything out. Tumbril Land Systems, Argo goes before there. My guess is that we'll see the MPVU. What is available for there? Probably the SRV. Maybe the Raft. I don't think the mole's not on the ground, right? Not on the floor. Okay, I'll invite Joe Freak because they just got on. Who wants in? Let me know. The SRV and then PUV. Okay. That's it. All right, so good to know. The Raft's not in there. Then Consolidated Outland is the crazy one. What do they have there? Just the Mustang? And the hover quad, maybe? It's just the Deltas. Okay. For some reasons. That's weird. Well, I mean, I know the reason why is because they wanted to put Consolidated Outland on there, but they don't make any sense. Ironically, there are more Drake ships in service to the UAE military than there are Consolidated Outland ships. The UAE Navy owns Cutlass Reds, and they also own Vultures. They don't officially use them through military service, and the Reds are kind of like civilian ambulances being used by military bases. And the Vultures are kind of like, you know, if the military owned a tractor. But There's no Apollo? Ooh. So they're not technically military variants. They're just civilian ships that the military purchased. But I'm assuming that for RSI, it's the Lynx, the Ursa, the Aurora, the Constellation, the Mantis, the Perseus, the Polaris, and the Scorpius. Though I could be wrong on the Constellation. The Constellation could be gone, and the Aurora could be gone, but... Oh, and Origin. I forgot Origin. And Origin is just the 600i, I'm guessing? Or is it the 890 as well? Aurora, Scorp, 4 Connies, Mantis, and the Ursa and the Lynx. Plus 2 hollows. Yeah, the Perseus and the Polaris. They don't even have the Mantis up there? Oh, there you go, Mantis. So I was right. Called it on that one. They don't have the X1 Force up? Of course they don't. They want to pretend that it even exists. 100i, 200... Wow. No, that's kind of pathetic, honestly. 100 series. It's 125A, right? And then 325A. A is just the abbreviation for armed, I'm guessing, or armored. It's the standard Star Citizen term for military. A military vessel or vehicle will have the A moniker put at the end of it. Assault could be. Though, I mean, you also have the M2, which doesn't have an A by it, but good old M2. Look up the U.S. military, not even U.S. military, look up the military version, just like military definitions of M2. It has its own Wikipedia page. M2. It's like 70 different things have been called the M2 throughout the history of the last, 200 years. The rival of M1. So is the F7A the military F7C is the cool version? Yes. That's what the C stands for. It's cool. No. But yeah, the F7A is the military version. The F7C is the civilian version. Stunk? Yes, stunks. The F7CM, the cool military. All right. I'm going to get started. I'm also going to... so everyone's good. I'm also going to hop into the Discord just in case. Going live. But I'm muted for right now. The the FA-18 stands for fighter attack. Anything that's pure fighter gets F. Yeah. Well, it used to be different because, like, the before the changeover in I think the 50s, P stood for fighter. That's why you had the P-52 Mustang or P-51, P-52, so on and so forth. Yeah, but it was all fighters got put in P. Pursuer. My frames. Okay. I'm gonna get out of the thick boy outfit. There we go. So we're not going to do any of that kind of exploration until probably Sunday. Saturday or Sunday. We'll try to do it on Saturday if we can. Just be careful there, Remiko. If you get here, make sure you don't set your spawn here, because you can't get out once you get here. For fighters. Steven with the PH. Steven. For Steven. He's there, Phantom. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. Not gonna make it. Woo! I made it.
You can take away my spaceship. You can take away my space suit.
Suit.
You can even take away my space lasers.
That's not my name.
Ever. Take away my space game.
Dasher 2204 has subscribed.
Thank you so much there, Dasher, for that subscription. You are very important, Papa. Very impressive, Pisser. Very good pedestrian. This is your follow the reason for Drinking Night. Shots and cheers in chat, y'all. Shots and cheers. How you doing, Dasher? Thanks for that. Shots and cheers in chat, y'all. Boop, boop, boop.
Hello and welcome to the Bennett Convention Center, our corp's leading destination for live events and refreshing food.
Hey, dude, pretty new to Star Citizen. I absolutely love your content. Thank you for watching. Just note that I am a complete dick. So a lot of people find that out about me and they go like, "Wow, Paul's a dick." So I always like to tell that to people new. It's like, I'm a jerk. I always try to be a funny jerk, but you know, fail off the times. But thank you for that support. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm guessing you watched a lot of the lore content, Dasher.
Bevic would like to thank all our guests for keeping the convention center.
Server is always struggling, Remiko. That's just the nature of Star Citizen right now. At least I'm a self-aware dick. Well, I've always noticed that. Whenever I get like a lot of people suddenly discovering me and they're like, "Paul, this is amazing. I love your content. Your lore stuff is great." It's like, well, someone always finds out that I like try to do something funny and or I say something. It's kind of a dickish thing to say, and people are like, "Wow, you're a jerk." It's like, yeah. Damn, that's a lot. Okay, let me see what we got over here. We've got the RSI, everything. Then we've got the Tumbril Nova down there. Is it just the Nova? Oh, and the Cyclone. Wait, where's the Cyclone? Just here? Gosh, that's a terrible one. Okay.
Argo Astronautics have been one of our most valued partners for centuries and can be found on almost all of our capital ships, space stations, and even ground facilities.
They're all in front of the Nova? Oof. I do enjoy the lore. You're very good at storyteller. Thank you. It's my job. I'm a teacher, a history teacher specifically, so any historian will tell you that history is just a story and how you tell it is what matters. I try to do a good job of that. I'm not saying I'm a good teacher, but I think I'm a pretty good storyteller. I think I found more people with Star Citizen come to me being like, Paul, you tell the story of Star Citizen in a way that makes me actually care. And I'm like, good. I don't think that CIG does a bad job of telling the story. I just think that they do a disconnected job. And they need to kind of reconnect some of those portions, especially in the game, to make it people like more happy about that. American history teacher, what an oxymoron. Well, I don't teach just American history, I also teach world history. Hey, Victoria.
Coincide with our brothers and sisters in the UEE Army. Tumbril land systems were responsible for such dependable and versatile ground vehicles that even the Navy found it beneficial to add them to our fleet. Secure landing zones in combat.
I tell the story of not America as well. You've escaped Tressler. Good. Turn off this real quick and go back to the more chill music. Escape. Thank you, Galactic Elf. Hopefully everything's okay in the Big Island. Must be a new server. I look over like, oh, it's this. Then look back and he's asleep. Fastest, like sleeping I've ever seen. I mean, I can. I will say I've been doing a big kind of... So here's the thing. The Polaris has a problem. The Polaris is a good ship in terms of its lore. It has some decent lore, but it doesn't have enough lore to justify like a video. So telling the story of how the Polaris came to be is probably more fascinating. The Polaris itself is fascinating, but like the context of the Polaris's existence. And in the process, I've created a monster. It is like 9 pages long, which my scripts mean each page is about 2 minutes. So it's about 18 minutes. And holy shit, does it go pretty deep. Like, my God, can the UEE just not get a Corvette built to save its fucking life? It took them 500 years to build a Corvette because the first Corvette they tried to build, they just said, let's just make a frigate instead. And then realized, wow, the frigate's terrible at the thing we want the Corvette to do because it's too big and it costs too much money. Let's build a Corvette. And then the dude who was making the Corvette died, so all the political capital went away. Then the Mezzers fought with each other for 200 years, kept killing each other to try to take power. That didn't go very well. Then the Van Duels showed up, and they're like, we need big ships to take care of problems. Then realized that their big ships were terrible at taking care of problems. And then the Mezzers collapsed. And then finally the UEE was like, maybe we should build a Corvette. It's like... What the fuck? Yeah, it has guns. The Polaris has size 7s, I believe. Oh, that's you, Ghost? Who just passed out? I thought I invited you. Yeah, you're already in there. Okay. Don't mind them. They're just doing daily prayer, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, we're going to be doing a tour here shortly. There you go.
Help! Someone drugged me.
No. Speaking of large warships, the warlord ship of Earth is visiting my hometown. Oh, nice. Oslo. I always tell people whenever I say it's the largest ship ever, they're like, no, well, technically this other was better. It's like the best ship in the fleet. It's like, oh, technically this is the best ship in the fleet. It's an interesting story because effectively they finally gave the role of the Corvette to RSI, and RSI was just like, let's make a fucking war crime machine, and proceeded to make a war crime machine. The thing about the Polaris that makes it stand out is that it's fucking fast, yo, and logistically costs less than an entire squadron. It requires less parts and less material and less crew to crew a Polaris than an entire squadron of bombers with almost as much firepower. It can also go much further than fighters. Like the job of the Polaris is to go into a system and just stay in that system for months, and then eventually get resupplied and then stay there for months. Whereas a fighter squadron needs a base, it needs to refuel, it needs like a location to protect it. So it's basically a flying fighter squadron. Sure. In the context of the naval doctrine of the UEE, it's brilliant. Yeah, by the swordfish. Bismarck got taken up by that swordfish, baby. As a war crime enthusiast, I prefer the RSI war crimes to Aegis. Everything was war crime philosophy. Well, because in theory, yes, the retribution has been tested in battle, but specifically once. It was in the Battle of Oberon, which is where the Nautilus finally got declassified and where the Perseus proved that it was actually a decent ship to use in modern times. Yeah, the character repair is finally back. They say it works differently, go? Yeah, but this will prevent you from getting, like your Mobigas is missing, your 3009 error, infinite loading screens, issues that will like prevent you from actually accessing the game. 19K errors. You're going to lose stuff, but it's a repair, not a reset. So it lets you play the game, at the very least. Which is good. Now CIG just got to fix all the other problems. Yeah, the Polaris is the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the Polaris is supposed to be able to be a kingship killer because it can technically house antimatter warheads, which is like, yeah, okay, we've got 24 antimatter warheads. Oh, see, more than that, I think. and 4 tubes, so you can fire 4 torpedoes at once. Yeah, the Polaris is a fuck that entire continent. That one particular person in that continent, we gotta make sure they can't leave, so we're going to turn the entire continent into glass. Radioactive glass. I haven't watched it with chat, but I've watched it on my own. We'll do that when we do office hours. Waiting for everyone to show up here. Remiko's almost here, so once Remiko gets here. Yeah, they're size 10s. They're the same ones that you see on the Retaliator. Well, civilians aren't getting access to antimatter warheads because that would be a that would be a terrible concept in game design. How do you defend against this thing that can like vaporize anything within a, you know, unbelievably kilometer distance? Retaliator has size 9s? I thought that the players had size 9s. I'd have to look it up. I didn't specifically talk about it having Retaliators, just said it had more. It had the same loadout as Retaliators. Except for nukes in space don't really work as well as Hollywood tell you, but it would tell you. Antimatter, on the other hand, orders of magnitude more damaging. Oh, it's the Eclipse that has the size 10. Eclipse is size 9s. Hold on.
Provides the backbone for many of the naval interception and reconnaissance units, carrying out operations throughout the Empire.
Justifying that.
Those with loved ones setting off today to begin their life in the Navy, stop by our friends and family to get a better understanding of what we have to look forward to in naval service.
Alright, looking this up. Yeah, size 9s. Okay. They did a revamp of the interior of the Constellation Phoenix. So you go to the Constellation Phoenix's brochure, you'll see a whole new design. The brochure is old design. The design they have in game is different. Yeah, we're not gonna see anti-mana torpedoes in the hands of players. But in terms of like the lore behind the Polaris, that thing is fucking dangerous. The thing is, it's basically a big stick. Now, alone, it's underpowered and can be chased down by, it can be overwhelmed by superior numbers. But that's not its point. The Polaris is a extension of the Perseus. The Perseus was designed to look mean. It was designed to scare the shit out of you. Even though it was small, that was its purpose, was to look like it would just eat you alive. And it worked. It was a psychological weapon as much as if it was an actual weapon. And the Polaris is the same way. It's designed to look and, like, with its specs, scare the fuck out of you. But in actual combat, it's not as effective. You might see the use of them on the Invictus, yeah. All right. Let me put in a nice little tag here. We'll run ad. And when that ad's over with, we'll get started. About 57 minutes in. In fact, I'll do that right now.
Invictus Launch Week is a great opportunity to see your taxes at work. As members of the Empire, it's your right to inspect the latest acquisitions of the UEE Navy. Invictus might be an odd place to reveal a new vehicle type, but Origin's new G12 impressed our test squadrons by operating in a variety of hostile atmospheres and environments. Our Pathfinder units are eager to get their hands on these new rovers.
All right. I'll mute myself here so y'all can hear me if you need to. Alrighty, let's get started. Welcome to the lore tours of Invictus 2953. We're going to be covering the last major tour before DefenseCon, which is coming up after this. This is RSI, Consolidated Outland, Argo Argonautics, Origin Jumpworks, and Astronautics, Origin Jumpworks, and Tumbril Land Systems. We'll be talking about the history of all of those companies, at least in summary, and then the ships that are on the floor, the history and the background for them. So feel free to come with me on this one. But before we do, if you're watching this after the fact, make sure that you hit that likes button. Make sure you subscribe for more content like this. Hit the bell notification, the bell icon to be notified of this, as well as, of course, to join us live at twitch.tv/theastropub, youtube.com/theastropub live. Make sure you hit the follow us on Twitch as well. Love to see you there. All right, with that all being said, let's get started with the granddaddy of all spaceship manufacturers, Roberts Space Industries. Come with me.
RSI as partners and invite you to see the latest additions to the
All right, so let's stop right here and kind of talk a little bit about this. So, Roberts Space Industries was founded in the 20th century. And that's right, I did say the 20th century. It was founded in 2038 by Chris Roberts on Earth. It started off doing different stuff rather than space. Its goal was eventually space, but it started out with pretty much anything that would be connected to space, food management, power systems, just kind of getting its feet wet. It found a hard time competing with other bigs of the industry at the time, but eventually in 2070s and in 2061 specifically, Roberts discovered the works of one Scott Childress. Scott Childress was a scientist who was working with a new particle that had been discovered, which we don't know the name of yet, but it's where we come to get the term quantanium from. The concept was that this particle, which is found in naturally occurring in isotopes, has a large amount of mass. It warps space around it in even small amounts. But if you could harvest it, which humanity discovered this time, was able to do, you could use it to manipulate space-time. But it was difficult to get. And so Childress thought of this was be the perfect particle to use in what we know as an Alcubierre drive. Today we know as a quantum drive, which effectively warps space in front of it. His theory, he was a young physicist, or young engineer, actually, not even a physicist, who had just got his PhD, and Roberts discovered his proposal and his thesis, brought him on board, and gave him the funding to start building this engine. Eventually, it would become the quantum core engine, which we know today is the quantum drive, and it's the foundation of all human spaceflight. So RSI kind of owned the patent on space travel for a while. Since then, they've gone on to influence just about every part of space travel, especially the military. A lot of early ships, military ships, are made by RSI. And we'll talk about one of them, the Perseus. But they fell out of the military game after a little while because they did not play well with Aegis, who was the favorite of the Meza regime. And when the Meza regime fell, the UEE needed a company that could build large ships, and RSI had managed to keep itself clean politically and got the options. So since the mid-29th century, the RSI has been making most of the large capital ships of the UEE Navy. But that's not the only thing they make. Let's go over here and talk a little bit about the most recent edition, the Scorpius. Is this the Antares? I'm not going to talk about Antares. We'll go over here. Talk about the Scorpius. So, come over here. So, the Scorpius is an interesting story. We don't know the full story behind it, but we do know almost certainly that the Scorpius's project name was Black Widow. It was put up against the F-8 Lightning and the what is today the Sabre to replace the Hornet. It did not win, but just like the Sabre, it was eventually adopted as part of the UE military and, of course, militia units. This was actually built by, originally tested with the famed Bremen Defense Force, probably the most famous military or militia in the UE. It's a two-seater heavy fighter built out of the same cloth as, say, something like the Hurricane. Or am I right on that one? Yeah, I think it's the Hurricane. And it's designed to attack ground targets as well as space targets with its two-seat design. There's even a variant called the Antares. This is very recent. This was only released 2 years ago. Well, no, last year, I think, even, was when this first came out. So it's a very new edition. It still hasn't fully been adopted in the UE Navy yet. But it is available for civilian purchases as well. There's also an E-Warfare version over here, which is the Antares, which also has that. All right. So, meet the descendants of the Marine Rapid Deployment Vehicle. The Marine RDV was the basis of the Ursa rover. It's unknown if the RDV is actually was actually made by RSI or not, but we do know that they studied the RDV and developed the Ursa. The Ursa here is over here. This one's designed for exploration. It has 2 pilots and I believe 4 seats in the back. Let me double check. 4 seats, yep. So total crew of 6. And then they also made a luxury variant over here, the Lynx. Now, the Lynx is was built for the Phoenix project. The Phoenix project was, we'll talk a little bit about it before we get to it, but effectively it was a dare, a bet. There was a popular show that made a luxury version of a Constellation, and RSI liked it so much that a couple of engineers got together and decided to make that bet into reality and actually created the Phoenix, which was the first in a long line of, well, the latest in a long line of luxury ships from RSI, because RSI used to make a lot of luxury ships and stopped during the Mezzer era, and it's kind of picked it up again. But yeah, this was all built in the mid-29th century was when the Ursa was first developed, because that was when the Constellation Mark III was first being pushed. I need a little bit more. All right, let's go over here and look up at the Legionnaire. So the Aurora LN is just it's kind of a variant of the original Aurora. The Aurora now is kind of the standard, everyone's first ship design, but it wasn't always the case. This is fairly recent. The Aurora was only first built, we don't know exactly the time period, but likely in the 29th century. There's a couple of other predecessors to the Aurora, including the X7, which is the first ship built with a jump drive inside of it. During the early days of human exploration after the discovery of the first jump point by Nick Croshaw. But since then, things have gotten simplified. In fact, the man who'd go on to build, to inspire Anvil, Arnold, or I'll say Arnold Case, but that's Arnold is the name of the guy who founded Anvil, Leonard Case, actually built the predecessor to the Aurora, which would eventually it's a simple, easy to fly ship kind of concept. With that, and this is like I say, this is the latest version of it. There are many different variants of the Aurora, but this is a militia version because it's easy to fly and easy to use. They figured that they could make a militia version that would help protect space a little bit more. So, with that, let's go to the Constellation. So the Constellation, as a whole, the Constellation project was greenlit because of the drift away from military spending towards civilians. The Constellation was RSI's attempt to kind of get back into the civilian market, especially with large ships, a nice multi-function ship that could reach a wider audience. So this started sometime, let me pull up the actual date. This started sometime in the mid 27th century. 2712 was when it was first kind of introduced. This is kind of the waning end of the Mezzer era. And it was pretty popular, pretty successful. Now, the original Constellations were just the ship. There was nothing else. But as they made different versions of the Constellation, they began to add more and more stuff to it. So the latest version, this is the 4th generation of Constellations. The 4th generation Constellation comes with a bespoke P-52 Merlin, or P-72 for the Phoenix. And the Ursa, which was developed out of the Marine Rapid Deployment Vehicle, is developed specifically for the Constellation Aquila. So, yeah, there's different variants. This is right here is the Taurus. Over there, I believe, is the Andromeda. The Andromeda is the base version. The Taurus is the transport version. It swaps out one of the turrets for a... what are they called? Tractor beams. And drops out the P-52 for a just more cargo space. Then the Aquila is got a rover. It's got the Ursa that comes with it, and the P-52. And of course, the Phoenix has the Lynx, kind of a luxury version to the Ursa, and the P-72, which is kind of a luxury racing variant of the Merlin. The only thing that's interesting about it is that the Merlin was built by Kruger Intergalactic. Kruger was a company that was first sort of a parts manufacturer and a good partner with RSI, and in the 29th century they decided they wanted to try to get into the ship market and weapons market, because they made all the parts for weapons but not the weapons themselves, and that's kind of led them to slowly evolve from there on out. All right, let's talk about the Mantis. Now, we don't know fully the date of the Mantis. I couldn't find it myself, but this is an example of what's known as a quantum enforcement ship. This is a popular ship with law enforcement and the Navy because it's a small ship that can fit in most jump points and kind of work with a lot of the fighter squadrons if need be. You don't need anything big or fancy like a capital ship or anything like that. And it can do a pretty good job. But it is also popular with pirates and other such. This latest version came out in 2949. So this latest version of the Mantis is only a couple of years old. But it's still pretty popular in the verse. All right, with that all being said, let's go over and look at some of the other offerings not from RSI. I'll try to be less spinny there for you there, Agent. All right, let's start over here with Argo to the right and move our way over. So, Argo Astronautics. This is where I tell you the story of Argo is kind of a weird one. Many of you may not believe me, but Argo started off as a train manufacturer. They built trains. Specifically, they fixed tracks. It started off as a way of trying to improve, well, not trains, not railroads, but mono tracks, monorails, maglev monorails. And the whole purpose was to improve old monorail design and maglev design to replace aging track. Its founder was Alana Redmond, who her mother was worked on the railroads. Her father worked on railroads. She worked on the railroads as an engineer. She actually started off noticing that there was a problem. Effectively, by the mid 23rd century, humanity had developed quantum travel and ships, and it was becoming more and more efficient to even do suborbital hops with ships than it was to use to traditional rails, which had been built all over the world. Alana Redmond specifically worked on the Trans-Am, the Trans-American line, which went from Alaska all the way down to Argentina. And the problem was that the countries that kind of controlled the track, which originally agreed to build it, all sort of didn't want to maintain the tracks. So she came up with a way of actually maintaining the tracks on the go after seeing that a piece of scrap metal which had fallen off had been welded to the track, and she noticed that it was almost as good of a job as spot repairs that she had seen herself. So it gave her an idea. She developed a system that would automatically repair the track as a train was going. So you just attach this system to the back of a train, and it would repair the track as it went. It would just kind of drop off a patch, and then would use the actual maglev, the magnetic forces, to kind of crush the patch onto a broken piece of track. This made tracks much more efficient, makes them a little bit better, and it effectively saved the rail industry on Earth. They would then capitalize this into buying actual new car manufacturers, like train car manufacturers, and by the end of the 23rd century, basically Argo controlled all the trains on Earth, and also started to build most of the train systems on Mars. In fact, it wouldn't be surprised if the track systems you use here in Stanton, most of them are probably built by Argo. Since then, Argo kind of expanded into other industries. Why they're called astronautics is because they found that the actual slowdown in their transportation of goods from one place to another wasn't their own tracks, it was spaceships. Spaceships couldn't keep up with the speed and efficiency of their tracks. So they decided to build their own spaceship. They called it the Multi-Purpose Vehicle, the MPV. MPV, and the Orbital Utility Craft, the OUC is what it was called, the OUC, and it was specifically designed to use the latch and go technology, which they used to quickly move cargo containers from one track to another, just on a ship. and that ship was just an orbital shuttle. It was so popular, it was used for and modified for a bunch of different other purposes. So they decided to improve the design, and specifically in the mid 29th century, the Argo would reapproach the design and would come up with this, the MPUV. So the thing about the MPUV that a lot of people miss is that while Argo, yeah, these are kind of cargo vessels or they have transports, the MPUV is not actually a ship, like the MPUV-P and the MPUV C. Those are just the destinations based off of its module. This module right here, I believe, is a cargo module. Might be the personnel module. It's the personnel module. So this is the MPUV-P. But if you drop the module, which you can, then you can replace it with any of the other modules. Right now we only see 2 modules, but there are reports of other modules from things like salvage, repair, search and rescue. So it's a Swiss Army knife. All you need is a module, and you can turn the Argo MPUV into whatever you want to, which is why the UEE Navy loves these things. Every major capital ship in the UEE has one of these. Almost all docks in the UEE have multiple fleets of the MPUV. In fact, most people's first spaceship they learn to fly is an MPUV because they're so common. These things are dirt cheap to make, dirt cheap to repair, and they're super efficient. And they work with pretty much all the systems that have already been built in most of the infrastructure, because most of the infrastructure is built by Argo. So, yeah, it's pretty popular. And pretty much, if you're in the military, you'll probably learn to fly on one of these. So, with that, let's talk about Origin.
With the expanding nature of operations throughout the systems, have a look to see how each of these ships will help defend the Empire.
All right, so Origin Jumpworks. Now, Origin Jumpworks GmbH was a company that was founded on Earth in Germany. It was founded in the 29th century. Approximately 28th century, approximately 2750. And its original purpose was not what you think. It was not actually vehicles. It was building engines. Origin Jumpworks built high-performance engines for yachts and for capital ships. So, for instance, the capital ships the engines on the Javelin are likely Origin ships in making. Possibly even the Bengal engines are Origin engines. But by the mid to late 29th century, the Origin had realized that they wanted to kind of try their hand in their own spaceship manufacturing. Now, this is where I tell you about a little piece of unwritten history that is not talked about a lot, which is during the 29th century, it was a time period which I like to call the cargo crisis. At the end of the Meso regime, lots of companies ended up being collapsed because they have their close ties to the dictators. The problem was there was no companies rising up to replace those aging companies. So many companies that did transportation and parts just disappeared. So overnight, the UEE had a problem. They had a vast empire that was hungry for resources without the ships, new and repairing ships, or the ability to repair the old ships that they needed to do so. It got so bad that the UEE at one point was repurposing Idris frigates into cargo ships. If it wasn't for Misk's development of the whole series and Origin, we'd probably have been a very different empire by now. Origin developed the 600i. That was their very first, or not 600i, just the 600 series. That was the very first ship they ever made, and it was not what we have today. It was a cargo vessel. An entire back section was just cargo, and it was a bulk freighter that carried a ton of cargo from point A to point B. A lot of the exterior design is the same, but going back to their roots in the late 29th century, they began to develop personal spacecraft as well, and luxury spacecraft, especially since they were most well known for their luxury engines. So they began the 100 project. Now, the 100 project was an attempt to make a personal luxury spacecraft, and it failed spectacularly. But after that, they learned the lessons from it and developed the 200 and 300 series. Over here to the left, we have the Origin 325A. The 300 series has been a rousing success for many years. The original 300i was easily converted into multiple different variants. And the 325A was it's kind of a military version, which actually has a bespoke Willis Ops targeting array, which makes it a little bit more fancy. In terms of its weapons loadout, it's kind of like a baby Vanguard. It has some pretty big teeth. But in the mid-the 30th century, I should say, the 2940s, the executives at Origin wanted to revisit the 100 series because they developed what's called the air system. Come over here, you'll see it right over here. I think it's usually slapped on the side of one of these things. It's right here. The air active intake refinery. That's what it's called. So the air system was designed specifically as a way to refuel in flight. This would increase the fuel mileage of all of their ships. But they didn't really have a ship that they wanted to test it on. If they could modify other ships to put them in, but they wanted to have a ship that could just test the efficiency, just push the air system to its absolute maximum efficiency. So they decided to revisit the 100 series with everything they had learned with the 300s. And that became the 100, the series that we see today. This is actually, I believe, the 125A. So the 125A is the kind of a militia version. Both the Origin 125A and 325A are used by military as interception vehicles, but mostly, in very limited roles. So, lastly, we have Consolidated Outland. Then we'll go talk about the Tumbrils and so on and so forth. So, Consolidated Outland is an interesting backstory. Consolidated Outland was first...
Utilizing their timeless desires to push the boundaries of our universe. To defending humanity with the majesty of the Bengal character. We are proud.
Where are you? There you go. So this was founded very recently. Consolidated Outland was only founded in the mid-30th century, somewhere around the 2930s. And it was founded by someone who's as infamous as he is famous, Mr. Silas Kerner. Now, Silas Kerner is the latest in the long line of the Kerner family. The Kerner family is the family that basically runs the Bremen system. They'd been the de facto governors of the Bremen system since the foundation of the colony, way back. And they'd been the main benefactors behind the Bremen Defense Force, and the people who ran what's now known as Terra Mills. And specifically, Silas Kerner had become a billionaire before he was 15, with some investments into various different corporations. So he was well known as a kind of a child prodigy when it came to business leadership. But he was well known for his absolute fanatic love for spaceships. He actually has several original versions of the first quantum-capable civilian ship, kind of the Model T of spaceships, called the Zeus. He has several original versions in his own personal hangar. He's also well known for being very opinionated about most of the other ships that are out there. He finds that most ship manufacturers are not very good as the older versions, and felt that he could make himself his own better ship manufacturer. So he founded Consolidated Outland. At first, when he founded this company, it was mostly as an attempt to try to save Bremen, because Bremen has been slowly dying over the years because of the lack of protection or lack of evolution of their agricultural business. So he felt that by founding a company in the dying system kind of more technologically based, it could help boost up the economy, and did so. Though it originally, Consolidated Outland only built modification systems. If you have a very rare modification to the F-7C Hornet, which is supposedly the military upgrade, that is actually made by Consolidated Outland. They do basically aftermarket body kits to transform ships to look like other ships. That did well enough that they were able to launch their first ship. Now, the one thing that Silas Kerner hates more than anything else is the Aurora. He hates that ship with a fiery passion. He feels that it's uninspired and dull, and it's the worst ship to get people excited about spacecraft. So he decided to build a better Aurora. And what did he do? He built the Mustang. So this is a series of ships that are designed specifically to take on the Aurora's title as best, first-person ships. And just like the Aurora, there's different variants. This before us is the Mustang Delta, which is the militia version of it, used by some frontier militia and possibly even UE military on the front lines. It's a very basic ship. It's a cockpit. It's got some engines, but it does have some armor. It's a bit of a stealth capabilities, and it does come with some pretty damaging Hurston Dynamics rocket pods, which right now you can only get them on the Mustang, or on the Delta here. It's one of my favorite ships. It's a really nice little light fighter. It's very small in comparison to some of the other light fighters out there. So yeah, that's Consolidated Outland. Now let's head out from here to the ground vehicles and the ships that are yet to come. For those of you who just found me, I'm hoping you're enjoying this. Damn you, performance. This happens all the time. The little lag spikes like that. But I'm glad, Dalras, that you were able to discover this. I actually do a kind of a lore channel, YouTube channel as well. But I've been doing this on my regular channel for a bit, so just kind of more of a nice little thing. All right. So this is the works of the last great car manufacturer in the verse. Tumbril Land Systems was founded just before, kind of in the early 26th century. It was founded by a husband and wife team who had met because of a vehicle which saved the man's life. His future wife and her father saved his mother during a sandstorm on this planet of Yar, where she was a researcher. They'd known each other because her parents were actually the docents, the caretakers of the base that his father was, or his mother, I'm sorry, was a researcher at. And after that, they had gotten close together by working on that old vehicle and got married and went off to college. She went off to becoming an engineer. He went off to become a businessman. And while they enjoyed their life, they found it rather boring. So they decided to kind of take their old vehicles that they were working on when they were young and design their own version of it. And what came of that was known as the DX-20. Right behind you, over here, is the DX-20. This is the Tumbril Cyclone. This is the first vehicle that those two first two founders did. And it was first built in 2536. It was the best ground vehicle that had ever been built. in the sense that most people had stopped building ground vehicles since the age of, spaceships. So there weren't a lot out there. This was just more modern, using more modern techniques, and tested against some of the worst environments known to man. And the thing was that it was a pretty well-used ship or vehicle, though it didn't make a lot of money because, who wants to drive a car in the age of spaceships? But then a few years later, in the 2540s, we have the First Tavaran War break out. And the UEE military realizes pretty quickly that they need a ground vehicle to transport troops and act as a scouting vehicle and many other things, because they can't always be using expensive spaceships. So they pull all of the ground vehicle manufacturers they have, all the ground vehicles, and find out there's one vehicle that's just straight up better than the rest of them, which is the DX-20. They contact Tumbril and then began to make the Tumbril DX-20 for the military. It was given the name Cyclone by the UE military, and the use of these Cyclones was extensive in the First Tavaran War. In fact, it famously defeated a Tavaran tank battalion during a quite famous defense, using something very similar to this, which is the AA variant. They basically installed rocket launchers onto the back of a Cyclone and used it as a rocket artillery, while other ones that were kind of over here like this, I believe this is the NT. Other Cyclones built similar to this with anti-missiles and cannons would charge down a mountain range to where the rocket artillery was, do hit-and-run attacks on the tanks and run away. Get incredibly close to these tanks and kill them. But they won. They managed to push back to Tavaran, and as a result, we see the Cyclone became insanely popular. Every service member, after coming out of the war, wanted their own because they thought they were fun to drive, they were very rugged and dependable, and so they made a lot of these things. After that, they eventually made other vehicles and civilian vehicles as well. But only less than a century later, well after the founders had retired, the military came once more because of the Second Tavaran War, which had broken out. And they asked them to build a new vehicle to replace the DX-20, the aging Cyclone. And what they came up with was this. Now, it's unsure exactly if tanks had existed extensively in the arsenal of the at the time of the UEE before this, but one thing is for certain: the Nova tank completely replaced most of the other tanks and other kind of ground vehicles that existed. This is the main fighting vehicle for the UEE Army and the UEE military, made most famous by the Battle of Korean Pass. 4 Novas were being driven as kind of a test out. They had just been kind of repaired through a mountain pass when they just stumbled right into a Tavaran strike group. That Tavaran strike group was was preparing, using this kind of remote mountain range as a staging area for an attack. The Novas were not prepared for this, but were able to kind of back up into a defensive position and held for, I think, like a day, almost 24 hours straight of straight fighting, with only one Nova tank ending up being destroyed before reinforcements were arrived to push the Tavaran out. But the defense of Korean Pass proves that the Nova was as good of a replacement for the Cyclone as they could have wanted. Since then, the Nova has gone on to fight in just about every theater of UEE conflict, against pirates, against the Tavaran, against the Vandul, and most recently got a revive for the Vandul War. So this is the most recent version of the Nova. With that, let's go in and look at some of the other vehicles and ships which have yet to make it in. Question: you imagine that ultimately our in our treks of human space, say Geon Space, that the border systems were to earn rep? Yeah, almost certainly. I don't see that at all. That whole stuttering, I don't see that at all out before this. So All right, so this is the G12A. Now, in the realm of rovers, RSI is not alone. We have the G12, which was created by Origin. The G12A has its own rocket artillery, but it's mostly designed as an escort vehicle. It's designed for VIP escorts who get to point A to point B. The thing that makes this different from, say, the Cyclone is that it's fully encompassed. So it's a closed vehicle. It's a short sleeves and or shirt and pants kind of environment. You don't need a spacesuit to drive it, and has nearly that sort of speed, but isn't quite as big as, like, say, the Ursa. So it's kind of like an in-between. All right, let me get over here. This is the latest vehicle to be released, though it's not very new. The other vehicle that was developed in 2606 alongside the Nova was the Storm. The Storm's concept was to be a light assault craft. The point was to be able to zoom through enemy lines, go behind enemy lines, and attack artillery and other softer targets behind the Tavaran lines. It's got a smaller crew complement, only one, and it has a bespoke size 3 energy weapon built by Hurston Dynamics. The main weapon of the Nova is also built by Hurston Dynamics, known as the Slayer Cannon. Yeah. And lastly, I think we have a couple more here. This is the most recent one. This is actually, I'll kind of give you a little bit more of the story of the Tumbril. The Tumbril went out of business in the mid-29th century, completely went defunct. And it was one man by the name of Terence Naban, who was a big fan of the Tumbril brand, who purchased all of the IPs for Tumbril and decided to re-release many of the classic vehicles, the Cyclone, the Nova, and so on. This, which is the Ranger, we don't know exactly, but it's likely one of the first original concepts of the new Tumbril, because there's no records of this in history so far. So, but the Ranger has many different variants, just like the Cyclone. This is the TR, which is a military variant. It actually has some weaponry attached to it, but it's designed mostly as a light scout vehicle. All right, let's go over here. Yep. All right. This is the oldest ship that's still in service with the UEE military. This is the RSI Perseus. Built in the early 26th century, this was the first in the kind of revamped UPE at the time, Navy. This is a patrol ship. It's designed as a means to react to instant problems, as well as designed to fight or to patrol an area, kind of a short-range patrol craft. It has size 7s, which are designed to fight subcaps, not really capital ships, and some size 5 torpedoes. But it's designed to look as mean as it punches. It's mostly designed to terrorize anyone it faces into surrendering before they had to fight. And it's got a pretty good record of that. During the unified currency riots, where people were writing against the idea of having a unified currency across the empire, only a single Perseus showed up to respond to the riots, which had killed hundreds of people and injured thousands by that point. But when that Perseus showed up in orbit, those riots stopped because they were afraid of what this brand new ship would do. Most recently, it's been phased out because it's kind of an older ship that not a lot of people had use for. But one of the last Perseuses was at the Battle of Oberon, and was set to defend part of the line during that battle. Managed to fight off, I think, 2 or 3 Tavaran cruisers on itself before it went down. That was the UES Achilles. Proved just how absolutely devastating it is. The thing about the Perseus you have to understand is that this ship was built before humanity had the technology to put a shield on a ship this size. It seems mighty and big, but it's actually only about the same size as a hammerhead, slightly bigger than a constellation. So it just was not didn't have the power generation to be able to put a shield on when it was first built. So instead of that, it relied on heavy armor and an anti kind of ballistic cannon. You see in the back up there on top. It's a point defense cannon, a PDC. And that combination makes it a very slow ship, but it also makes it very good to fighting against the Vanduul. That's why I was able to survive for so long. So as a result, because of how impressive its performance was, Admiral Bishop himself asked RSI to revamp the Perseus and re-release a new version of it for the public and for the military, which is what we see here. The new Perseus is coming out soon. Let's go over here. Speaking of RSI ships, this is the most recent RSI. If that's the oldest ship in the fleet, this is the brand new ship of the fleet, the RSI Polaris. The Polaris is a corvette, a slightly bigger than the patrol ship, the gunship over there, but slightly smaller than the Idris. This ship is designed to patrol distance systems by itself. It has enough firepower that rivals that of any bomber squadron with less personnel that requires it and can last much longer out in the black on its own. Plus, it has its own bay where it can carry at least one fighter. And most of the ship is actually just its engines. It's just engine room. It has an incredibly powerful engines, which makes it super fast as a ship. And it's basically designed to scare anyone as much as it is designed to fight. But it does have a lot of teeth with 4 size 10 torpedo tubes. These were pushed into production. They were designed sometime in the 30th century after a very long history. But it was only in the attack on Vega in 2945 that really pushed the ship into rapid development. So it's yet to be released, but it is currently serving with the UE Navy. Lastly, we have the SRV. Now, the SRV, just like all Argo ships, is built as an infrastructure ship. The purpose of this ship is to tractor beam ships about its size, maybe a little bit bigger, kind of like a tugboat, to bring in damaged ships where it needs to go, as well as to pick up cargo if it needs be. So this is designed to support any, kind of like as a mobile crane for any distant port of call that needs a little bit more help. And that should be coming out very soon too. All right, that's what's on the floor here for RSI, Argo, Tumbril, Consolidated Outland, and Origin Day. Thank you for joining us. If you are joining us on YouTube or Twitch, thank you for joining us. It's been awesome to have you here. We'll be back for the last day, which I believe is just the Drake Day, which is the Drake Defense Con, which we'll do on Saturday. As always, if you enjoyed this, please sure you hit that like button, subscribe, follow us on Twitch, and hit the little bell icon for and I always want to see your comments down below about your own thoughts on these various ships and so on. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.